two people that I highly respect and admire, and they are big encouragers. I want to talk about these two because on October 10th is something special to me, and I'm going to discuss these two fellows coming up next. Go ahead. Don't be shy. Go ahead. Subscribe down below. And thank you for being here. If you have already subscribed, go ahead and hit that bell below anyway. And make sure you get the next notification for when the new uploads take place. October 10th? Yes, that's a big day for me because two friends that I admire, highly respect, have something to do with October 10th. One of them, you won't believe this, if he was still alive, he passed away years ago, he would be 118 years old today. All right, so yeah, go ahead and do the math. Go and do the math. Not only was it October 10th, the year was 1910. He was born. He was born on 10-10-10. Mr. Bryce Hall, thank you for being an encourager and helping me out during my troubled times. Just happy birthday, Mr. Bryce Hall. The second person that's so important to me on October 10th is Mr. Fred Weber. All right. I had been just in the hospital after being paralyzed from playing football for less than a month. Then all of a sudden this strange man came into my hospital room. Well, I wouldn't say strange. Mystery man came into my hospital room. And we began talking, become friends, having lunch together. And Mr. Weber ended up being an encourager. After it was all done over with when I met him, I considered him an encouragement angel that came desperately during a time of when I didn't know my future health for me. The day he was dismissed, a few days after we met, he was dismissed. He was in for a kidney stone. And the day that he was dismissed, he didn't come by to my room to say bye or anything. But he wrote a letter and he gave it to Nurse Vicky for her to read to me. Now, believe it or not, I had this letter. Look at this. I had this letter. I've kept it. I don't know if you can see it from here, but right there, October. See if I can get it up there to you. October. Move it over a little bit this way. October 1983, October 10th. All right. Now, even though these pages have gotten old, stained, torn, I end up laminating them so they can survive longer. But these things are 35 years old, and once a year, wouldn't you know it, on October 10th, I read this letter to get a little pick-me-up when I desperately need it. All right, so I read it on October 10th, and today is your lucky day. I'm going to read it to you. All right, now bear with me. It's going to take a minute because it's 3.5 pages, but I think you'll find it worthwhile. Dear James, as I have laid in my bed just down the hall from you this past week at St. Thomas Hospital, at night, when the halls were quiet, I have wondered, like you, why. Not why a kidney stone sidelined me for a few days, but why you happened to fall as you did and be sidelined indefinitely. It's one thing for a 59-year-old man who's had a rich and full life to be incapacitated for a few weeks, but quite a different thing for a 19-year-old boy in the prime of his manhood to be so severely tested. James, I have never been tested as you will be physically. But we all, at some point or another in our lives, are faced with adversity. Amen, Mr. Weber, telling me that a long time ago. My test, more mental than physical, came during WW2, World War II. And if you would let me share some very private things about those times, some for the very first time, then perhaps in some small way I can inspire you the added desire to be more quickly overcome some of your adversities. All right? So he's going to share some stuff with me that he possibly hadn't even opened up to anybody. He said some for the very first time here. All right? In 1943. I was a 19, free-spirited like you. The world was mine with a fence around it. I played all day and sometimes all night. A war which I knew little about was going on in Europe, but that I didn't think was my world. That was someone else's world, someone else's problems. Suddenly, the crusader of the world conflict swept me up in its clutches, and in a few brief months, I found myself side by side with others like me, struggling against the outgoing tide at Omaha Beach at the coast of France, praying to God that He would let me live long enough to reach the beach and find cover from those who were just as interested in stopping me. James, my friends are sinking from my sight all around me, some so close that when I tried to hold on to them, I had not the strength to save a fellow man. Boys like you are now, James, with fuzzy faces, rebuilt trucks, girlfriends, moms and dads, brothers and sisters, high hopes, and many other things. These young men, the cream of the American youth, going back to their maker in the cold, icy waters of the Atlantic. This was it. There wouldn't be another chance. No living mother's eyes to look down on them and say a million prayers. No brother's arms to support them when they cannot support themselves. I made it ashore, James, one of the lucky ones. However, in that space of a few hours, I lived a lifetime. I know now what I gained, but I only thought then of everything that I had lost. I never thought it would be the same again. I feared my mind would be infested forever with terror, pain, and loneliness. It took a while, James. It took everything I could not to quit and say, this isn't what I had counted on. I've been dealt a dirty blow. I want to go home, or I have no future. I guess, though, I may have thought some of those things, but to dwell on them was folly. Like you, I lived, and with the help of others, doctors, counselors, therapists, family, friends, I was able to overcome severe mental shock and put my life together. I pray you would be able to do the same. And you know something? I have no doubts but what you will. Good luck, James, and don't ever hesitate to call me if you ever need me. God bless you, Fred. Fred passed away a few years ago, and but from 1983 until he passed away, I contacted him or he contacted me. We went and had some lunch together. We talked business together. We encouraged each other. He encouraged me, I'm sure, more than I was able to encourage him. But he told me how much that I inspired him, and it made me feel good. But Fred, writing this letter, pouring out to me of what he had been through and gone through and witnessed, the shock, some of the things that I would be going through at the time, opened my mind up to be more acceptable for change and better prepare myself. So these two men, Mr. Fred Weber, Mr. Bryce Hall, buddies, thank you for your encouragement and your inspiration, and thank you for setting examples for me when I needed it the most. And until then, brothers, until we see you again in God's kingdom, and everyone else that's watching this, be sure to do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.